one erases, obliterates all ontological, metaphysical commitments, and one reads Hegel as a kind of a generalized theory of discourse, a kind of a theory of all possible ways to talk about the world. This, of course, you are developing in the United States at a very high level. For example, authors like Brandon McDowell, the so-called Pittsburgh Hegelians, and also, up to a point, Robert Pippin in Chicago. That's their reading. A kind of a how should I put it? For example, their reading of Hegel's logic would have been, no, this is not any metaphysical movement of idea generating itself. It's simply a systematic description of all the categories we can use to describe reality. It's kind of a general discourse theory with no metaphysical commitments. So again, they would have claimed in an almost Foucauldian, referring to Michel Foucault way, that Hegel is not answering big metaphysical questions like, is there only matter in the world? Are humans just animals or whatever? Hegel just describes all possible ways of talking about humans. You can talk about humans in this way. Okay, it doesn't work. You can talk about humans in that way. He just gives outlines the entire field of discursive possibilities without any ontological commitments. I think that this solution doesn't work. The, as it were, Urvater, primordial father, not in the Freudian sense, but more in the sense of origin, of this reading of German idealism, I think, is Habermas. Because he also avoids ontological commitments. In what sense? Look, if you were to ask Habermas, but what do you ultimately think? Did man develop out of nature? Was Darwin right? He would probably say yes, of course. But nonetheless, in his philosophy, he prohibits that. His big point is that the normative transcendental horizon of our reasoning, this implicit ethics of communicative action, is an a priori. You cannot, in an evolutionary way, what some evolutionists from Steven Pinker and others try to do it, you cannot generate our normative language universe in a Darwinian way from nature. You have to presuppose it as an a priori. That is to say, whenever you talk, deal with others and so on, this horizon is always already here. You cannot, as it were, step on your own back and locate it into reality. But what I claim is nonetheless that the two sides remain unreconciled. On the one hand, at the level of philosophy, Habermas insists that the horizon, normative horizon of speech is our ultimate transcendental horizon. We cannot move beyond it because any move beyond it already needs this horizon. You have to speak, and so on and so on. On the other hand, at the level of simple ontic description of reality, of course, he would probably agree. Of course, we developed out of nature and so on and so on. The two dimensions are not reconciled. This I see again as a failure. So how would I answer to this deadlock? My idea is to propose a totally different, how should I call it, global mapping here. My idea is that first, as I already hinted, there is a break. I'm the first to admit. There is a break between pre-Hegelian and post-Hegelian thought. There clearly is a break. The pre-Hegelian universe, especially the universe of classical idealism, not German idealism, like Spinoza, Leibniz, whatever you want, of this traditional metaphysical universe. And what happens after Hegel, this 19th century assertion of some positive form of life which escapes conceptual ideal meditation. It can be productive process, it can be existence, it can be their drive. This gap is a fact. But my point is that Hegel is neither, that Hegel is a vanishing mediator. That, you know, as Lacan says very nicely, that when you pass from one discourse to the other, for a moment always the analyst discourse appears. In the same way, I claim that Hegel is that moment between traditional metaphysical philosophical space and this post-Hegelian space, to use Alain Badiou's term, the space of anti-philosophy, in the sense of relativizing philosophy with a reference to some pre-logical ground. Hegel, I claim, is something unique in between, and literally a vanishing mediator, in the sense of the moment you are in post-Hegelian philosophy, Hegel becomes invisible. The proof of this invisibility for me is precisely that decarunnering, that screen memory, that stupid idea of Hegel, oh, that madman who thought I can read the mind of God, I know everything, and so on and so on. This is the image we form to obfuscate what was truly subversive in Hegel. So I think, again, Hegel is that moment of passage where something so radical emerges that when a new epoch stabilizes itself, post-Hegelian epoch, Hegel is invisible. So again, while accepting the gap between pre-Hegelian and post-Hegelian universe, what I'm saying is that Hegel is nowhere here. That Hegel is what is missing, too traumatic. And that again, this ridiculous image of Hegel is the proof of it. Now, okay, I can be a little bit longer, no, because I'm alone. I'm really sad that my best friend, Mladen Dolar, wasn't able to come for some extremely stupid health reasons. We were so sad because we wanted to do what you call, now they no longer do it, but 20, 30 years in movie theaters, what we called double bill. You know, I hope me being the cheap B-movie and Mladen being the whatever. So if you allow me, I would like to give you just a couple of ideas of how this works with Hegel. Where is this dimension? First, let me provide you another example of dialectical process. Something maybe which brings us already to the novelty of Hegel's theory of meaning. A very simple notion. You know, we have in moral theory usually this problem. Are you to be judged by your intentions or by real results, act, and so on and so on? What is Hegel's theory about this? Or meaning is how, when you talk, basically this problem debated again and again in analytical philosophy between intention, motivation, meaning, and its realization, expression in a statement, in an act, and so on and so on. Hegel has here a very modern, I'm almost tempted to say postmodern insight. For Hegel, and I would like to use here the example of Antigone, for this is the key of Hegel's reading of Antigone. It's that, it's not that Antigone is from the very beginning aware of what she wants. Something happens with Antigone. Because first, before the act, she defines her intention. You know, in those famous lines, Zeus did not announce those laws to me. I did not think anything which you proclaimed, you Creon, strong enough to let a mortal override the gods and their unwritten and unchanging laws. They are not just for today or yesterday, they exist forever, and so on and so on. This reference to what Hegel calls immediate ethical substance, the eternal unwritten laws. That's how he perceives her act. But if you read the play and Hegel in detail, you will notice how precise Hegel is. He claims that through the act itself, performing the funeral rites for Polynices confronting Creon, it's only through the act itself that Antigone becomes aware of the true motivation of her act, which is her brother only. You know those scandalous lines which, and here this is my very friendly stab at Judith Butler, my good friend and so on, who even she in her book on Antigone is uneasy about this. You know, this, the weirdest moment maybe in Antigone where she all of a sudden particularizes in a very weird way her point about insisting on the funeral. She makes it very clear, Antigone, that